So to get the UV map exported so that we can essentially look at it as a guide in Photoshop or whatever 2D image editing software you're using, we can just go to UV and then down to Export UV Layout. On the right, we can select all UVs. Otherwise, you can select UVs and leave this unchecked. And then we are going to increase this to 2048 by 2048. So a bit about resolution here. 1024 by 1024 is called a 1K texture. 2048 by 2048 is a 2K, and a 4K would be 4096 by 4096. 4K is the best resolution to use when you're doing a production render. A lot of companies and studios will use 8K textures. It just takes a lot more time to render this out if you're using anything above 4K. We're going to keep it simple and do 2048 by 2048. Okay, and this looks good. Let's go ahead and export our UV. You can see here I've already done this. So I'll just name this UV2. Export layout. You can see here it's created an image file, and now we can open this in Photoshop. Okay, so when you open this up, what you'll notice is that the background has transparency and our UVs are on their own layer. So let's add another layer, and we're going to move that to the bottom, and we'll just fill it with white. So Command Delete on the keyboard is the shortcut key to fill in with the background color from your color picker. And then what I like to do is take layer 1, which is our UV layer, and I'll rename that. Let's set it to multiply mode. Now anything we paint underneath our UV layer will be visible. So let's create another layer. We'll call this texture. All right, to just show you quickly how this will work without doing too much texture work, I'm going to paint this blue here. And you can color outside of the lines. Blender will just ignore those pixels. Okay, that looks fine. If we want to add a different color to the other parts, we can just choose another color and then paint that over those UVs here. One thing to note, if you don't turn your UVs off, they will be visible on the texture. So you need to make sure that you disable this. Let's first save our PSD file. And now let's export a PNG file. Export as QuickPing is the fastest way to do that. Instead of UV, we're going to call this color. Now let's look at how to import that image. In shading view here, what you can see is a real-time texture view on the top, and on the bottom we have an area for our shader nodes. So if we go to material, we can create a new material, and you'll see that automatically a new material is selected and added to our object. And in the node view, we can see it represented here. Let's go ahead and add that texture we just made. So if we do Shift A to add, and then go to image texture, we can put that here, and we'll just connect color to base color. Now there is no texture assigned, so it's sending no texture or color information to our base color. So let's go ahead and open it. So here we have our color PNG. Let's open that. So now you can start to imagine how easy it would be to add any kind of color information you want. For instance, wood texture can be easily applied using our UV coordinates. Back in Photoshop, I just want to show what can happen if you have stretched UVs. So I'm going to write the word chair. Let's just check to see that that is on our UVs, and it is. Let's save this out. Save that over our color PNG. Okay, so if you don't see it here in Blender, that's because we need to reload the image. One thing you can do is just click Open Image, select it again, and it will force a reload. Okay, so what we can see here is that this looks fairly accurate, meaning it's not particularly stretched in any way. It's a faithful reproduction of our typography. If we go into UV editing, now we can see our texture show up here. And like, let's say I wanted these UVs to be over a different part of our image. I could select them and move them. And let's turn on our texture view here. So you can see here how this is kind of working to locate our pixels on our polygonal object. So I'm going to undo this. And one of the things that we can check to make sure our polygons are corresponding to our UVs as much as possible is to check for stretching. And so we can do that by opening up this view tab here on the right. And so that's just N on the keyboard to pop this open. And if you click on stretching, let's deselect here and press N on the keyboard here. It's a little bit hard to see because our texture is visible. So if we actually press the X button here, it will get rid of our texture. It's still assigned to your object as the texture. We just can't preview it here in the UV editor. All of these should be blue. If, for instance, we take this one, we're getting different colors starting to appear, and these are basically indicating that these are extremely stretched. So if I select a few here and I start to scale them up, you can see how the distortion of these UVs is being displayed visually through this color information. So we know we've done a pretty good job because there's only a little bit of light blue here coming underneath. The only way to make that absolutely perfect would be to cut more seams. And so UV unwrapping is really a balancing act between minimizing stretching of UVs and hiding seams as much as possible.